Vertical drops are one of my favourite coaster types in Rollercoaster Tycoon. Compared to many coasters, they can be cheap to build, generate great excitement without losing control of intensity, and can have pretty compact designs too. So let's take a look at why vertical drops are such a winner and how to build a successful one. Some advantages over other coasters include the steep chain lift hills, supports which allow for tall rides, and of course the special piece unique to this ride type, the holding drop. Although in terms of the game it is kind of pointless, more on that shortly. Of course it isn't a vertical drop coaster without a vertical drop, although you aren't penalised if you don't have a vertical drop. Vertical pieces keep the ride within the same tile as it either descends or ascends the tracks, meaning you can build quite a compact ride compared to most other coaster types. They can also be incredibly short. You receive no stat penalties for a quick ride, and that always reminds me of Oblivion at Alton Towers. It's basically a lift hill, vertical drop, and a large banked turn back to the station. But because of the vertical drop, it was incredibly popular when it opened at the real life park, and for many years maintained some of the longest queues at the park. So let's look at some key stat requirements. You have to have a drop, and it has to be at least 15 metres or 49 feet. It must hit a top speed of 36 km per hour or 22 miles per hour, which you'll achieve with that drop. There must be at least 0.1 negative Gs, again the drop will see to that. And that's it. No penalty for short tracks, and you don't even need the vertical drop. Here's a ride which hits the stat requirements without one. Vertical drop coasters are favourable for controlling intensity. Even a ridiculously high drop doesn't lose control of intensity until you start adding special track pieces. But brakes can help control the speed to reduce the impact of intensity when using, for example, vertical loops. A simple loop, similar to what you might build for a launch coaster, can achieve basic stats over 5, easily increased with scenery, other rides, or even a dueling coaster. So, earlier I mentioned holding brakes aren't essential. In terms of stats, it's actually useless. Here is Mini Diver with a holding drop, and the same without. The stats are identical. But it's not just the holding drop you don't need. I mentioned you don't get penalised for not having a vertical drop. Well, in terms of stats, you don't even gain anything through having one. Here's Mini Diver from the build menu, and here it is modified to have a non-vertical drop. The stats are almost identical. With vertical drop coasters, the cars are much shorter than standard coasters, so keep entry and exit buildings near the front for quicker turnover of guests. Vertical drops have a few advantages, especially if you're tight for space. It doesn't matter how high up your coaster is, it still only uses 2 tiles to descend, so you can make some pretty compact designs where other coasters might end up sprawling out over your park. But when it comes to building costs, they are one of the more expensive coasters at £90 for a station and £60 or dollars or euros, whichever currency you use, for a straight track piece. But this can easily be countered by the compact track design. There are several vertical drop coasters already in the game. Canary Mines has 2, while you'll also find vertical drop coasters in Future World, Dragon's Cove, Thunder Rocks and Tiny Towers, while you'll have to complete one to pass the goal in Dusty Desert. Oblivion in Alton Towers was the very first real-life vertical drop coaster, and loops on vertical drop coasters were actually possible in Rollercoaster Tycoon long before they appeared in real life. Yukon Striker in Canada became the first to use them when it opened in 2019. Finally, if you have the Time Twister expansion, you'll find vertical drop rebadged as Valkyries in Time Twister. You can have a lot of fun building vertical drop coasters, and while an actual vertical drop isn't actually required, it does defeat the point of choosing this coaster type if you don't include one. Thanks for watching, and do join me again soon for another Rollercoaster Tycoon ride guide.